Hi, everybody. Welcome to another live session. Excited to be back again. And I think many of you know who are coming on here, or if you've been here before, I no longer have my right-hand man in Iric. And so as you come on, if you can just give me some of those warm and fuzzies, let me know you're here, that I'm actually live, that you can hear me, that you can see me, and let me know where you're coming from. I think we had a really awesome audience last week, Zimbabwe and all sorts of other random places. So it was really, really cool. All right, I can see right away. We're getting feedback that I'm here. So I think that's a good start. And obviously I can always see the ticker and the numbers of people coming on, but it just gives me the warm and fuzzy. So thank you so much for being here. And so let's dive right in. So we're always going to start with just a few little agenda items, and these little agenda items, we'll get past them very, very quickly. If this is your first time here, we will get through all the questions, right? So we'll make sure that we get through everything today, and we won't stop until we get through everything. So typically these sessions run about an hour to an hour and a half. I don't expect everybody to hang out with me the entire time. So agenda items. If you are a past client or anybody who's ever used our app, the app is going away on Monday, next Monday. So we're switching to a new platform, and I promised to build in some of those free resources again, but just the way things worked out, we had to put down the desktop app. So go in there, download your data. If you've done or used anything on the app, if you've signed up before, we shut down the sign up so you can no longer sign up. But go ahead, get into the app, get all that data out of there. It's going to be really, really helpful if you can do that ASAP. It's going to be more challenging moving forward to do that. So that's number one. Number two is, I think I've announced a couple times, and I'll prompt on this a few times. I have put like a lot of years of work into a course that will be coming out on 2/15. It was 2/1, and stuff happens. So I had to push the date back to 2/15. And then on 2/15, we'll be offering coaching packages that will involve the course. So you get a discount if you buy a package of 3 and you buy the course. That course is going to really focus in on interview mastery and really kind of talk you through the steps of building some of the soft skills, some of the pre-prep, and then obviously really drilling down into how to have success on the behavioral and hypothetical side. Last thing, last agenda item. I like to get down to business and get to these questions quickly. The last piece is, if you like what we're doing here, please smash that like button. And then if you've never subscribed to our channel, please consider subscribing. We do these lives every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific. And I'll let the community know through the community tab if I'm ever going to take a week off, but I don't see anything in the foreseeable future. And then we do new content videos every other week. And yesterday, really, I wanted to just focus in on doing a video, if you haven't had a chance to watch it, on really understanding our interviewer. We are kind of remembering that or forgetting that we're going into the interviews and not thinking about our interviewer as much as we should. If we can get in that type of mindset, it's going to be really, really valuable for success. Okay, without further ado, let's dive into the questions and we'll get through everything. Thanks. You're waiting for a SWE L5 offer from Google Zurich. What is a good number for total compensation? What can I ask? Okay, great question. So for Zurich, I want you to use the reference points on levels.fyi. There's more on, if you're a software engineer, there's going to be more data on software engineering than any other role. Go to levels.fyi and look at some of the premium markets, right? So the premium markets are going to be markets like Los Angeles, Seattle, Boston. Look at some of those markets and see what some of those premium markets are paying. And then whatever you're seeing on levels.fyi, increase that number by X percent, 15%, 20% or more as your anchor. And remember, I always like anchoring as a 4-year average, just so we don't get skewed by years 1 and 2, because they're going to pay out 33% in years 1 and 2. So you want to kind of look at that 4-year average and use that as your driver, even though they'll say that they don't look at it that way. It's okay to say, okay, well, I do. So That would be my recommendation. By far, Zurich is the best paying market in all of Europe, and it's not really even that close. Okay, got an offer for an account strategist for L4 for Dublin. Okay, absolutely. Thank you for your help. Just wanted to ask you about the total comp. They offered you 84K euros base plus 40% bonus plus 68K USD. And the recruiter told me initially before sharing the offer that they had offered 74K euros as a base, but he pushed back and increased it to 84K. All right. But I pushed back again and amended it to 88 as a base 40% and lowered the stocks to 48K. Okay, so we went from 48K, so a 20K downtick in stock. Okay, so that doesn't sound good. Oh, total comp stayed the same, but they shifted it between base and stocks. So he pushed back, but the recruiter said governance in the offer process. This is the total highest comp we can offer you. Okay. And how many times to push back? You had mentioned the bonus is 15%. Where is this difference coming from? Yeah, the 40% looks like there's some incentive-based model here that they're starting to do for these roles, I guess. I hadn't seen that before, so maybe that's just new data to me, but I like the 40%. So if we're looking at just this is 88, so 40, 120. Yeah, I mean this is a pretty good offer for Dublin overall, I think. And remember, when we push back, we're really focused in on pitch and tone in these negotiation conversations. Yeah, we're saying that this is kind of our best and final, or this is our best and final. We are not going to move a dime. So just really pick up on their pitch and tone. And then the number of times you push back just depends on the process. I've had negotiation clients go back 5 times and get money more times every time over 5 times. That didn't even sound right. But and then I've had clients go back and the initial offer came through and they literally got nothing else. So it just depends on, again, the conversations, and you'll rely and lean back on that kind of pitch and tone and pace. That will be the most useful guide. But overall, these numbers sound pretty good for the Dublin market from what I've seen. So just make sure that you care more about the base or the equity. Just make sure that that plays out in whatever way you see best, because you want to make sure that some people like getting more equity. Equity over time can be a better play, but it's really based on your needs, your family's needs, etc. Good luck. Keep us updated. Come back next week and let us know. How do they pick who interviews you for the on-site? Or is it something random? No, it's typically not random. They're typically, in any organization, is going to have certain people who can do certain types of interviews for certain types of roles. But let's say you're interviewing for a specific role, for instance. Hiring managers can handpick. Yeah, they can absolutely say, well, I want Sue, Jane, and Bob to interview you. And so it just depends on whether it's very role specific. If you're going after a specific role and I'm the hiring manager, I'm definitely going to handpick at least a couple. I might not handpick like the cross-functional interviewer, or I might not handpick a technical interviewer. But yeah, they get to pick. And then remember, this is why it's so important, why I talk so much about level, and why we really want to be setting the tone and stage on level with our recruiters, because, at most organizations, they want people at the same level or above interviewing you for a given role. They don't want people below you to interview you. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's something you don't really have control over, but you can control a little bit with the recruiter by understanding the leveling up front. For Google's GCA interview, how specific should the solution be? Does it depend on how responsive the interviewer is to clarifying questions? Asking for an account strategist interview. So I like it to be incredibly specific, but not take too long. So find that nice balance, right? Solutions should be about 60, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, and we're just going to cover like this small portion. Then at the end of that solution, we're going to prompt and we're going to tell our interviewer, Sue, hey, Sue, a couple of cool items where we could double click in that solution. We could go a little bit more in depth on A, chat a little bit more about B, Or in one of those initial concepts, going back to our framework, in C, we can chat a little bit more about that. So the solution should be specific but snappy at the same time. I would give the same recommendation to every single candidate. Like, your level of depth needs to be great for any interviewer. Just make sure you're getting into the weeds. Remember, so much of what happens in these solutions is people are giving high level, fluffy answers, and it creates no connectivity. So we need to create those great visuals as much as we can. Okay, now we're going over to RRK. How would you address a gap in direct experience, i.e., my background is in finance sales? I'll tell you right now, for an account strategist, it doesn't matter. That's not really the core skill set. They're looking for your ability to collaborate, to problem solve, to have really, really good communication skills. And so people are coming from all sorts of backgrounds for these roles. I get a lot of actually like smaller entrepreneurs for these roles as well, people running small businesses that do some advertising. So it's across the board. So your background is not as important. I would say just up your game in Google Ads just a little bit. Like, you don't have to be an expert, but any context, understanding branding versus sales, and just all the suite of services, it will help in those interviews. Good luck. Accounting related roles like a controller. No, what I always tell people on the accounting side of things is I want you to really strongly rely on your skill set. Any position, I'm always going to have the same lead. Like, being a controller is great, and there's a lot of responsibility there, but it doesn't really work well if you're not communicating with the critical team members to make sure that you have all the pertinent information. And so I always kind of I want you to lean on your domain expertise, but I'll always back that up with just saying, hey, like, go beyond the domain expertise and really think about what are the types of questions you ask certain people in the organization for these types of roles. I used to do a little bit of hiring for these types of roles. When was that? 2010 and 2011. I did all finance and accounting recruiting. So they're great roles. Obviously, controller is it's a title that it has a lot of reasoning behind it, right? You got to have control amongst like all those financial items. So I hope that helps. I know it's super high level. Okay, great question. When does stock refresher happen usually? How often and how much? The last question, how much, we're going to remove that. There's just way too much discretion by level, role, location, but we got a really good data point. And actually, this was backed up by recruiting at Google, because I know you're going after a Google role, but we also back this up by finding data on Team Blind as well. If you haven't checked out Team Blind, it's a good resource for just everything tech, just teamblind.com. And you can sign up for free there. So basically the way it works is, let's say you start in February of this year. In February of this year, you're not actually guaranteed refreshers next year because the minimum qualification for refreshers is a full calendar year. But is your boss, Jane, really going to not give you refreshers when you worked 11 months and give everybody else on the team refreshers? Probably not. So it's manager discretion. So you might get a little less because you didn't work a full calendar year, but you should still expect refreshers. Now, as you hedge into this year, that refresher grant's going to get less and less, pays out in January, and then it's a 4-year vest, 25% per year. So just let's make the most simplistic model, 40K. Let's say you get a 40K refresher grant that will pay 10K a year for 4 years. Now, here's the thing. You have your initial grant, then you have year 2 refresher grant, then you have year 3. So grants start to roll on top of grants. And that's why when you get typically to years 3 and 4, you're starting to make some really good money. Now, of course, Google has front loaded the stock a little bit, but still, you should be doing pretty well at that point. Okay. Technical accounting questions. Are they still looking for a thought process like investigate if we've dealt with that problem before, find internal expert to collaborate with him, research guidance, document proposed solution, clear solution with an expert. Do they expect me to tell them what the exact solution is? So it's a great question. So for anything that's and this could be for any role, for any question that's a more like straightforward technical question, we absolutely want to clarify. But this is where if it's very, very straightforward, such as how does X work? Or what would you do in the case of Y, right? You definitely want to clarify. We always, always have to clarify. But sometimes when it's a very straightforward technical question, we can drop the framework and go right to the solution. Just depends on the question. Definitely read the question. But yes, I think you're kind of hitting on these are the steps you would take. Now, again, you would want to be as specific as possible with those steps for the role that you're interviewing for. Absolutely. Okay. After Google virtual interviews, 5 interviewers submitted feedback. Who and how will decide if I move forward to the next stage, team match or HC? So that's really dependent. That's dependent a little bit on the role. But if you weren't interviewing for a specific role, you would only go to hiring committee if you were like a slam dunk. I usually wouldn't take, when I got in those cases and I didn't have like, the most common I would face for this was with software engineers. If I had an engineer who just crushed the code and system design, I'd put them right into HC, have them pass HC, and then I'd put it out there and say, hey, I have a HC approved candidate. Now, if the feedback is not perfect or really close to perfect, I'm probably going to go to team match first so that I can find a hiring manager that will write a nice statement of support to put in front of HC for why you should be a hire for their team. It adds validity, it adds strength to the case for hiring committee. So those are a couple of the scenarios. Just talk to your recruiter, but they should be the one that's really looking at the feedback and assessing, hey, like, how do I feel about this and should I move forward? And they have enough data typically, if they've had any sort of experience there, they have enough data to say, okay, this is a case that should just go straight to HC or needs to go to team match first. And if it is team match first, don't worry about it. Like, it's not a big deal. That's most people. Then some other teams like it to go to HC first. So it's just, there's a little bit of ambiguity. Just make sure you're asking your recruiter the right questions. Hey, man. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay. For the program manager role, how much knowledge of project management is needed or prior experience? So those interviews rely heavily on 2 pieces. So there's just 2 pieces of the puzzle. Or should we call it a puzzle? Let's call it a pie. So half the pie is project or program management expertise, skills, being able to talk through things and experience in that space. And the other half is more domain, technical, whatever your expertise might be. So it's critical. Like, without that kind of knowledge, you don't have to be coming from like a program management title per se, but it's really important that you have those skills or expertise. Okay, you gave up on the Google process. The energy and effort I will have to spend was not worth it. I got another offer way more advantageous in terms of financial terms by Google. Okay, I mean, look, the reality is that my expectations of this audience that's watching are pretty high, right? Like, I think you should put the time and effort into it. Why? Because if I hadn't had that job at Google, I wouldn't be running my own business now and have the freedom that I have. And so I'm obviously a big advocate of putting in the work to get that great branding to get into the door. Now, it is hard to compete with Google money over time. I mean, I can't say what your offer was in comparison to what a Google offer would be, but with a strong negotiation, and if you get in there and perform with refreshers and promotions and their strong merit increases, the strong bonus escalators, it's hard. Google isn't for everybody. It's not the end all be all. Not everybody has to land at Google. It's just a good opportunity to gain some really good skills, make some really good compensation, and at the end of the day, like that brand has some value. That's all. But I do recommend putting in a lot of work, and I think maybe the work can feel overwhelming. But I think that the give for time, like how much time you have to give to the value of what the end result is so limited. And I think when we talk about interviewing and negotiation and learning these skills, the ROI, you will never have a bigger ROI than learning interview and negotiation skills. These ROIs can be game changing for our life. So to set aside 40 or 60 or 80 or 100 hours to put in this work, the ROI is worth it, in my opinion. Thanks for the comment, though. Okay. Yeah, so this question, how do you explain the internet? This is a question I've seen. It's definitely a tricky question. For me, the number one item that I'm not going to go all the way into the weeds of this question, but the number one item that I would need to uncover to answer this question is I really need to understand my audience, right? The age of my audience, their experience with technology. So am I speaking to somebody who's literally never been on a computer before, or am I talking to somebody who's 4 years old and they've been on the internet, but I need to explain it to them? We really need to understand our audience in this case, and then what we're trying to uncover in this conversation. Are we really trying to get into the weeds technically of how it works, or are we trying to just uncover the benefits? So these would be some of the questions I would start with, and then ultimately you would have to pick. And I think I would pick an audience that maybe had access to something like libraries, but they weren't in a place where maybe they had an internet connection. And so we could really and I'm just brainstorming. I've never tackled this question, but thinking about it, like, imagine you had the biggest library in the world, but you had it all in one place, and all you needed to do was type something into a keyboard. Now, again, we wouldn't even know. We would need to find that baseline if they knew what a keyboard was, for example. You'd have a lot of fun with this question, and you would really want to play off your interviewer a little bit to see how engaged and excited we could get them. But I have seen this question. Yes, this is not the first time. So just dive deep, but definitely try and understand your audience. For me, that's the biggest piece. I hope that helps. Okay. Thanks for creating the content. Absolutely. Currently undergoing the process for people ops. Okay. And completed 1 case study, 3 interviews. Okay. So there's more to this. Sorry, it looks like it cut down here. Okay, here we go. 2 of your interviews went well and 1 was average. Has Google now moved to an elimination based on interview stage process? All 3 interviews have been staggered. Before the 3rd interview, you were asked to fill up a Google employment application as an indication of a positive response. Still waiting for a result. So, okay, let's cover this a little bit. So yes, I have seen more people getting dropped out through the stages, and that didn't happen in the past, but it's only because of COVID, right? Because of COVID, interviews have been staggered, and if you don't do well in a couple of interviews, there's just no point to keep going, right? It doesn't make sense for you. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to the business. So I have seen that happening. You do not need to crush every interview. It's collective feedback. Did you do everything well? And ultimately, if they like you, but they want more data, maybe they'll just redo that one interview that didn't go well. In regards to filling out an application, I mean, that's pretty normal, but it seems like a buying sign. Again, a lot of the questions that come to me, but I would just go right back to your recruiter and ask as well, and just say, hey, I just wanted to check in, see where we're at with the status, etc. Good luck. Let us come back and let us know how it goes. Okay, you're soliciting for an HC result. You already got a team match. Does the HM have access to my interview feedback? And if they are supporting me, does that mean that the HM? Yes. Yes, they have access to your feedback. They're the only ones. And yes, they're supporting you because they believe that there's enough positive data to have you on their team. They like you and they believe that HC will approve you. Now, sometimes hiring managers are like recruiters. They think there's enough data there, but HC can be a wild card. But you're definitely in a good spot right now. So you just got to stick with it and hope for a good result. HMs will push a little bit, but they wouldn't take you to this process if they didn't like you, want you on their team, put in the effort to make that statement of support, etc. Keep us updated. As always, come back and let us know how it goes. Does Google prefer a candidate with some experience for an apprenticeship role, or I think for an apprenticeship role, your competition has some experience, right? And what I mean by that is your competition has definitely done internships. Is this a deal breaker? I don't believe it's a deal breaker, but just having some of that internship experience specifically usually just helps because it gives really unique, interesting, diverse examples that you may not have from an educational perspective. I don't think it's a blocker, but I definitely think that having a little bit of experience for these helps. All right, everybody, caffeinating and hydrating at the same time. Hey, Dana. So thank you for that. Yeah, if you'll go back to the chat feature on practice interviews, my colleague Shannon's very on top of it. I can tell you right now, and I don't want to digress because I know the audience is here to get their questions answered. Since we pulled down the app, we had to pull down our booking, which was run through the app. So Shannon is literally covering every single chat that comes in per day. It's like 50 to 100 per day, and she's just trying to manage all of it. So please try her again. I am currently trying to finalize the course, which I think I mentioned is coming out 2/15. I had to push back a little bit, but in doing that, I've had to kind of limit my schedule a little bit to get that done. So please try the chat again. She'll get back to you. Okay, thank you. Can you please share the link from yesterday's live session? We can put in the resources. We can put in the resources tab, the video. It wasn't a live, it was just a regular content video we did yesterday, but you can always, don't wait for those to come on. It takes us a couple days for us to timestamp this. So we usually timestamp by like Friday afternoon. But if you want to go right into my YouTube channel, it's the last video I did yesterday. No, I don't have that rubric for SWEs. This is an item where you're at the HC process. I just want to kind of like put your mind at ease. This may not help, but any data diving that you're doing at this point to try and navigate and figure out the rubrics and trying to understand it, it doesn't matter. You don't have control over HC. It's just something you absolutely cannot control. And so much of what I talk about, and I'm going to continue to talk about it more and more. And that was actually the title of today's live. And let's pivot and let's focus a little bit more on this control item. How is knowing the rubrics for an L4, L3, or L4 HC really going to help you? And again, I want to make this a positive tone, a positive conversation, but it's not going to help you. Knowing those rubrics, it doesn't give you any more control over what HC does. We have no control over HC, and they are a total wild card. Sometimes they're having a good day. Sometimes they're having a bad day. It's not always 100% perfect, and it's just what we see with the interview process. We're all humans. We're all fallible, and there's just a lot of imperfections in all of this. So I would say just be patient and make sure that if you're having some anxiousness over the result, which we all do. I went through HC, I feel you, and I was an internal employee at the time trying to transition. So I knew what it looked like. So that added additional stress. is just make sure that you have a very clear idea of the exact date and time you're going to HC so you know when you'll get the result. We're a half hour in. I'm going to do a few prompts during this live real super fast because I know we're already 25 minutes behind on the questions. Welcome to my YouTube lives if you've never been. If you have never been and you like what we're doing, please subscribe to our channel, smash that like button. And the biggest change to our business is 215. I'm releasing a pretty in-depth course. I'm really excited about it. It's been 3 years of work in the making, and I think it will be a differentiator. I believe that the systems and the process that we're creating for you is just going to really break it down and simplify it for you. So 215, that course will be out, and I pushed from 2-1, so hopefully I don't have to push again. But I'm pretty sure 215 will work itself out. HC is done in the team matching stage from December. You don't see any openings in India. HR didn't say. There are a few openings in Taiwan and the US. Can I pitch for those? Test engineer. Pitch away. We don't know. We don't know if there's possibilities to work in other markets. Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, absolutely. I want you to ask and just stay on top of it. Do what you're doing. Just stay in contact. And then if at any point the recruiter's like, hey, chill out. How often can I contact you? Once a week? Once every 2 weeks? Once a month? What's the cadence? Because you're at the stage where you want to just stay on top of it as much as you can. Google HR told me in RRK and coding interview, the subject can be anything. HR read a list of subjects that could be in the interview, lots of stuff to study in just 2 weeks. Impossible. Well, I mean, again, yeah, I mean, these are difficult interviews, and typically they look for a lot of especially when we talk about coding and doing those kind of interviews, they look at the real foundational level. I mean, I would just kind of challenge the impossible comment because people are doing it. So you can never be prepared for everything, but you can prepare as hard as you want. And with any of these interviews, right, especially if we're looking at maybe doing a coding round, that might be more of a position that they're hiring for more. And so if you don't feel ready, it's always okay to say, hey, I need a couple more weeks. I just want to make sure that I'm not putting this position at risk by pushing out my interview a couple weeks. And it's a very fair question and very safe question. And you should be asking that at basically any organization. So any organization, if you want to push or get more time, it's okay. But yeah, it's just really important that you're getting the pulse from your recruiter. Yep, you can put your question right here. Hey, how are you? Nice to meet you. Okay, we're really far behind if we're saying the hellos, but that's great. I still love the hellos. And that's the other thing. Let's just pause for a second. Just remember, we're a super positive platform. If anybody was here last year, we had to kick somebody out because they weren't being positive. And just positivity, and then sharing any data or information. It just doesn't have to be just questions. If you have any information, things are always changing in the job world. And I'm trying to keep pace, but sometimes people have data and information that I don't even know. It is not necessary to have a competing offer to negotiate effectively. You just need to anchor high and stay committed and be gracious and kind. If you can do those things, you'll do great. Okay, so done with the interview and had very positive feedback. The recruiter said he didn't have any positions open as of now. Initially, I was told hiring nationwide. Okay, just stay in touch with them. Again, whatever information they're giving you. Looks like, sorry, there's a second one here. Didn't give a specific timeline. Is that a positive sign? You stay in touch with your recruiter. Once every week, once every 2 weeks, once every month, just stay on top of them. That's all you can do. That's the only thing you can control. Okay, Victor, this is a great question. So quick note for anybody who doesn't know, Colorado passed a law that any job description for any job posted in Colorado, that they have to put the base salary number or range or anticipated target number. I feel like it's an okay indication of level. It should give you a sense if it's like an L4 or L5. The thing about Colorado though, for like especially tech, they're giving you base salary, so it doesn't include base bonus and equity. So it's such a deceiving number because it'll say this job pays 136K when really the base range might be up to like 150K, and then we think about our 15% target bonus. So now all of a sudden we're at 172.5, and then we're thinking maybe we can get 250K in equity. So it's just, yeah, I like that Colorado did that, but just remember it's a total package deal. But you should be able to get some sense from the base salary. That's my long-winded answer. Hope that helps. How much time do you have to wait after host matching interview to hear response? In that stage, made an interview a week ago. You wrote your recruiter, but nothing. Yeah, well, you just got to follow up with your recruiter again. Unfortunately, the only thing we can control is that we stay on top of it. We can't control our recruiter's inability to communicate appropriately. Okay, you were asked to re-interview the program manager readiness. I was told the hiring manager wanted to assess other program management skills. What does that really mean? That's what it really means. Sometimes it means that the programmatic skills didn't come through quite as strong as they wanted to, but there was enough positive signal, good signs. They were happy with all the overall interview feedback so far that they want to give you another opportunity. So what you really need to focus in on is just making sure the readiness piece, program manager readiness. When things get off budget, off schedule, right? These things happen all the time. When you have to communicate programmatic changes, these are just very, very common. When you have issues with resourcing, internal, external. So just being ready, it's really about strong risk mitigation plans, building strong dependencies, etc. I hope that helps. I want to say thanks. Okay, amazing. You received your offer letter this week and looking forward to starting in February. Lots of time watching your videos. Amazing, Brandon. Thank you so much for that. We're super excited. That was the other thing. If you come in and you've gotten the job, please come in and let us know. We're super excited about that, and we appreciate it. You've already got the job. You don't need to show up for these lives anymore. So we really, really love it. We've had sessions where, maybe we've had up to 8 to 10 people come in and tell us that, and that's awesome. And I'll always cue in on the same thing. We provide the information, but you have to put the work in. So really, it's a credit to you and all the good work you've done. Congrats. It's amazing. You have no competing offers? Yep. Can you use your current job as a competing offer? If so, how would you solicit a counter from your current company? Wow. Okay. Two big things to unpack here. You can't use current comp. I mean, not in the US at least. That's pretty much gone away. Now, maybe there's some states where you can still do it, but mostly current comp has been taken off the table. It's the item I disagree with the most. I don't understand why we can look at competing offers, but we can't look at comp. It's the same thing. One is a job versus another job. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world, and I really dislike it. It logically, there's no logic or reason behind it. The logic or reason was a court case in Massachusetts that basically stopped companies from being able to take current comp into consideration. And it's probably one of the worst decisions that happened because it really hurts the candidates and benefits the companies. And so somebody was paid off. That's my opinion. Can leave it at that. Soliciting a counter offer from your current company. Not only is that's still your current company, so that counter offer would not be recognized by any company that you're trying to go to. Counter offers within a current company is still considered current comp at your current organization. It's not a competing, and don't go for a counter. 90%, and I can't tell you whether this stat is right, it's probably a little inflated. 90% of people who accept counter offers are gone from that organization within 1 year. And the reason why is that you probably weren't leaving just for comp reasons, probably management issues, overall position, etc. No counters. Counters are it's not a good way to play. And by the way, once you open up that door, to a counter, you are going to be viewed differently, like it or not. You will be treated differently for every single day moving forward because of that counter. They'll just be bad feelings, and that's why people usually don't stay. So avoid counteroffers at all possible. We can throw that resource in here. I did a video on this as well. You have 8 years of experience in tech consulting, and you're going to HC next week for an L4. You told your recruiter early in the process you wanted L5, but they came back with a strong L4. What are your options? How long should I go before? Okay, so at this point, your option is L4, unless something else happens and your recruiter or hiring manager prompts that they are willing to do additional interviews for an L5. But right now, it's probably L4. How long should I stop before answering a GCA? You have 3 45-minute interviews back to back. What is your advice to avoid being tired? How long should I stop before answering a GCA? A minute. I would take a minute and just write the question down. We restate the question to Sue. Sue, I believe this is what you're asking me. You want me to imagine the scenario of X and solve for Y. And Sue will acknowledge. You say, okay, Sue, I'm going to take 1 minute to collect my thoughts. And then you take the minute. You have a Google stopwatch up on your computer. You hit the stopwatch so you know how long you're taking. Then you start to quickly examine on your cheat sheet. And again, we'll throw that resource in the timestamps. You quickly recognize your cheat sheet, which clarifying questions you want to use, maybe some framework concepts you like. Then you start to say, okay, what assumptions can I make and how can I solve for this using one of those framework concepts? That's what you're going to do in taking that minute. 3 back-to-back 45-minute interviews. It's starting to feel overwhelming because we're not used to going back-to-back. But back in the day, which wasn't that long ago, we'd be doing 3, 4, or 5 in a row. The one recommendation is if you're going from like one to the next, if you get in a situation where you just need a break, as your next interviewer pops on, you say, look, Bob, I've been in back-to-backs and I just really appreciate 1 minute to go to the bathroom. And that can just like be a reset. Even if you don't have to go, just clear your mind for a second. A lot of it is about our breath. We forget to breathe and slow down a little bit. And that is a huge, huge difference. So just take deep breaths, especially as you're going from like one interview to the other. Just maybe shut off your camera for half a second. Just take it in and breathe. And that usually will relax us a little bit. It's hard to manage the anxiety of back-to-backs, but that's my recommendation. Can you push a recruiter for a re-interview to reset leveling if I'm not happy? Yep, you can. They will ultimately be your guide, but this is a way to take control and say, hey, what would I need to do to come in at a 5 instead of a 4, a 6 versus a 5, etc.? Or is that even possible? Your first Google review. You had your first Google review ever 2 days ago. The recruiter invited me for a second interview and wants me to be more structured at hypothetical questions. How do you practice those? Oh boy, that's a big question. First things first, you practice them with somebody else. So friend, family member, colleague that you trust, former, current, and you need to practice with somebody else. But CFAS, you clarify, you deliver a high-level framework, you make assumptions to narrow the focus with visuals and details, and then you solve based on one framework concept. Everybody, or most of the people on this video, I think know I could go pretty deep into the weeds. Go to my YouTube channel, start to look at the open-ended content. There's a ton of it, but you really need to bring some structure. Again, clarify, framework, assumption, solution. Follow CFAS. Do not break that method. Do not break that order. That's what success looks like on that side. You've got to be rigid on the order and be really good at the transitions and bringing your audience into the conversation. And it's a big question you asked, but it's a good one. Just make sure you're going and looking at that content because there's a lot to cover there. Oh, sorry. I think I might have. Did I skip this one? Oh, how do you verify and check if your answers are right? No checking whether answers are right. for open-ended questions. They're never going to be right. They're going to be good, hopefully really good, maybe great, but there's too much ambiguity. There is no perfect answer. There is no way to check if they're right. That doesn't really exist. There's no real system for checking whether hypothetical answers are correct. And part of that is just the ambiguity of our audience. Like, we don't know what they want to hear. So don't try to be perfect in your answers. Just try to follow the methodology and system. You have 3 back-to-back interviews for an accounting analyst graduate position. Any tips on what questions they'll ask? Also, what types of interviews will each one be? Okay, so let's go back to the subject of our live today. This is a question for your recruiter. So what I can tell you for a position that's coming right out of school is kind of more like L3 roles and more junior level roles. Basically, they tend to lean a little bit more behavioral. But the types of interviews, like, we got to go right back to our recruiter. They're the expert. They're the one who is recruiting for the position. So we have to ask them. And this is so much of like, I want to just take a pause here. And again, I want to make sure that my pitch and tone comes across really positively here. But I don't know. I was trying to come up with a number of questions I get between YouTube comments, Slack questions, LinkedIn questions, and then just general questions that come in through my email. It's a lot per day. And I think that probably 25 to 30 to 35% of those questions are control-based questions. They're questions that if we just asked our recruiter or just did a little more research, we could get answered. And again, this isn't to be a pushback on you, Alex. It's just our recruiter is the expert. I'm like a third party who, by the way, I'm coming up on 4 years. It's been 4 years since I've been at Google. They have a better pulse than I do. So I just want you to really always use your recruiter as your resource. And I know they're not always great, but when we get them in these conversations, we have to be prepared to ask them a lot of questions and make sure that we're data gathering all the information we can. Because if we use them as our resource, we're going to remove some of these questions of not knowing. Like, we should always know the focus areas of all the interviews, because that should be one of the first questions we ask when we speak with them. I hope that helps. A little bit of a behavioral lean, and just make sure you're really focusing in on those great analytical and accounting skills and your collaboration, right? Really working with others to get those great results. Love your content. Okay, thanks for all the value you put. You're starting from 0 and looking at partnerships. Where's a good place to start? Ooh, it's a big question. Yeah, I mean, the place you should start is, I definitely want you to look at some of this is part of your research. We'll be going to like the Google's careers page and really understanding their approach and methodology to how they hire. Obviously, looking into any data that they have on the partnership side of things is going to be really valuable too. And then, as you start to think about some of these more specific interviews, like Googliness and Leadership, GCA, RRK interviews, we have a lot of data on YouTube, but create a plan. So much of this is planning. So where to start is not to just kind of throw everything in, have a plan. I'm going to do 1 hour every evening from 8 to 9 and stick to that plan, because I think that's where people get really overwhelmed, is that they don't create a plan for success. And so planning and blocking off time where you're going to do it is going to be really valuable. I know that is super high level, but I hope it's a good starting point. Okay, your friend gave you an interview in December. The recruiter responded 3 weeks later and said he's chasing the last piece of feedback and will get back. It's been a week and there isn't any response. Okay. You just got to follow up again. That's all you got to do. Just got to keep following up, and remember when you follow up, that you're just gracious and kind, not like, where are you? What's happening? What's going on? It's still excited and enthusiastic about the role, and just wanted to check in again and see if you were able to get that piece of interview feedback for me. Thank you so much. And you will continue to do that week after week. Now, if it lingers on to 3 or 4 weeks and you haven't heard back, You got to find anybody else who you have contact with, a recruiting coordinator, a sourcer, an interviewer, and go after them. But wait a few weeks. But continue to check in at least once a week. Okay, so we answered these questions before. Is Google slow right now? I had the compensation details and oral offer last week, but still haven't received the official offer. Had followed up with the recruiter, but she just said congratulations. Okay, Billy. Yeah, that's weird. Is Google running slow? I mean, like they're always running slow, right? It's so slow. It's just big, and their processes on the recruiting and compensation side need to be streamlined. They cannot continue to run an organization this large with old processes that don't really work. And I think they're doing little things here or there, but I would say the process and the pulse I get from recruiters there is that there's too much process and it's still overwhelming. And that's personally how I felt. I would just follow up again and kind of see what's going on. And you got the oral offer last week, so you should be, whatever that first offer is, you should be negotiating that offer 100%. Hey, Michael, what's the total comp for a solutions architect in Google Cloud based out of Atlanta and a cloud solutions architect, CA, but remote? Michael, come back and tell me the level. I think let's go L5, because I think that's what we were talking about last time. So L5, solutions architect, Atlanta, we should definitely be in that 250, 260, 265 is our 4-year average. Now, based out of Sunnyvale, but remote, would be more in that 300K range. If Sunnyvale is really the true location, if they're really using the Bay as the location. If it's not L5, come back and tell me. I think based on our previous chat, maybe like a month ago, I think it was L5. Can you please get examples on how to answer GCA interview? Okay, so I would really I'll just give the high level feedback that you have to follow the CFAS method, clarify, framework, assumption, solution. Okay, that's number one. And then you have to solve wearing the hat of the role. If we are trying to go in and solve not wearing the hat of the role, we're not going to do well. Third, in the solutions, there's too much making it up on the spot and trying to work through it. Let's not do that. Let's take previous experience, scrap out the specificity instead of saying, oh, last week at my company, you say, let's imagine that we're going to do A, B, and C. And you did that last week at your company. But again, you've got to be sitting in the role of the organization you're interviewing for. Otherwise, you're trying to solve from the wrong perspective. And it just makes answering these questions a lot more difficult. Solve wearing the hat of the role. Now, in terms of content, get after it. I mean, on YouTube, we have a ton of content on GCA interviews. I think everybody could agree. I don't think that there's more content anywhere else on GCA. So just check out those videos. There's a lot to unpack and uncover, but those are your starting points. Is TPM questions for Corp Eng team any easier? Can you share any more details about this arc? It depends. So I actually did support Corp Eng for like on and off for maybe like a year and a half. I did some Corp Eng. Was it easier to hire people in Corp Eng? It was. It just was a little bit more like Corp Eng seems a little bit more, I don't know how to articulate it, but it was easier to hire for Corp Eng. Now the T is interesting on Corp Eng because the vast majority of people I hired into there were program managers. So you'll have to talk with your recruiter or talk with people and try and understand what that T is. But Corp Eng is a great way to get in. And obviously I'm a huge fan of the program management ladder at Google. I think it's a great place to go. And you didn't say Google, but any program management role in today's landscape is going to do great things for your career. So transfers are a lot easier. once you're established and you've performed well in your job. So they are open to transfers. The stars kind of have to align. I always say for transfers, couple years. Just give it a couple years to learn the place, learn the role, build the relationships, and then try. That's typically what I saw as success when I was about 3.5 years in. That's when I started to try and transfer to London, and the stars didn't align for me to go to London, but I did have a couple of opportunities there. So it's definitely something I recommend, but you have to kind of earn it and spend a little bit of time first. All right, Harry, during your recruiter screen, you're asked for references of Google employees. Will they be asked to speak to professional experience or just generally? Because my Google references are my friends and family. Yeah, so you can bring them in. It's not going to add a ton of value, right? They're friends and family, so they're really trying to cue in on like good work experience in that collaborative space. But yeah, it can't hurt. They will, depending on level, maybe ask for external references. Usually they're asking it for L6 and above. But it can't hurt as long as you know those people are going to say good things about you. Remember, that's the most important part. You applied for Google TPM. Your recruiter is not responsive through all the virtual interviews. Sounds like the recruiter will decide if I can move forward to the next stage after getting feedback. Am I set up for failure? No, because the recruiter can't control good feedback. So if you got good feedback, they don't control that part. I'm sorry to hear that they are unresponsive. Just stay on top of them as much as you can and just follow up. And when you follow up, be gracious and kind. So this doesn't matter as much as people think. I did an initial video saying like I want to hear the numbers first, and then I kind of changed my mind to say let's anchor first. In both cases, you're still going to anchor high, right? Whether they come in low to begin with, then you can set your anchor, or you can anchor first. It's all the same. That's what I've seen. I've seen that it's all pretty much the same. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But you can go either way. You can start by anchoring higher. You can see what they offer, but either way, just set that anchor really high. Okay, thanks, Victor. How much time they will keep your profile on the team matching stage after HC? Are they going to reach out if the opening's much later, the whole process, technical interviews again in this case? So they'll keep you in the team match stage for, it's not determined. There's not a set amount of time. It says it's 3 months or 6 months. But at a certain point, if they can't find a team match, they will close out your profile and they'll just say, stay in touch for the future. And in those cases, if that happens, you will have opportunities in the future. Hi, Jeff. In the Google GCA, will there be any aptitude questions? Well, it all kind of goes back to your aptitude, right? But for that specific role. So, I mean, I guess in that case, I would say yes. But GCA questions don't typically tend to function on like a core skill set. It's a little bit more overarching. If that doesn't answer your question, come back and ask again. Hi, Jeff. Got notified that all interviews went well. Data analyst position, trust and safety. Yet to find a team alignment since November. HR has mentioned HC will happen after coffee chat with the team. Stay in touch with your recruiter. That's all we can do. There's nothing else we can control besides staying in touch with them. I mean, if you want to scour for open positions on the job boards and send them over to your recruiter, you can do that as well to be proactive. They should have a better pulse of what's available and what requires, and we'll go into the team match stage, but just stay in contact with them as much as possible. Absolutely not. They will not. And remember, when they collect references, they should be telling you that they're not going to be reaching out during the process. And if there's any funkiness, like we definitely shouldn't be providing our current supervisors. I mean, I know that looks good, but I would just kind of typically in these processes, remove that person, and then at the end, if they really needed it, offer that information. But you're fine. Don't worry about it. You'll have to get all the way to the end, or you'll already be in that finalized stage. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Verbal confirmation that you cleared all interviews for customer engineer, data analytics. December, recruiter said next step is team match. Haven't heard anything after the holidays. Follow up. The only thing we can control is taking control. So just be proactive and be gracious and kind. If you fail the first Google technical interview, how can you ask your recruiter to consider me for another interview opportunity? Joel, I mean, if you failed the first interview, they're probably going to say, hey, like, take some time to increase your skill set. If you want to apply or go after a completely different role, you can. You're not going to be blocked out of that. But typically, if the first interview doesn't go well, they're not going to just re-up for you. Unfortunately, there's just too much competition for that. So you're probably going to have to wait a minimum 6 to 9 months up to a year. I'm sorry. We're at 11 o'clock. If you like what we're doing, please smash that like button. If you've never subscribed to our channel, consider subscribing. My course, 2/15, it's coming out. And so as of 2/15, I'll be offering coaching packages for one-on-one. And then starting in March, we will be offering group coaching correlated with the course as well. So super, super excited. Lots of changes coming up to the business, and just I'll prompt on those for a second, and then we'll dive back in because we're doing okay. We're 15 minutes behind. We're starting our catch up, so we're in a good spot. Not a question, but received an offer as an associate account strategist and negotiated 10K more on equity per year. Okay, Jake, awesome. I wish you had gotten more than 10K equity per year, but you always got to negotiate, right? So any negotiation is good. Always negotiate. Hey, Jeff, if we cannot think when interviewing or you're too nervous, are there any tips to overcome it? Yeah, so breathing is really the number one. And then take your time. Take your time. Tell your interviewer, hey, you know what? I want to think of the best example, or I want to think about how I'm going to solve for this. I'm going to take a minute to collect my thoughts. And then you kind of look down, you start writing. You're doing deep breathing, but you're not really showing them that you're doing deep breathing. And you're just kind of settling your mind. Now, it's hard to have eye contact during a video interview. How do you make it better? You practice with other people. It's the only way to make it better. The only way to make it better is you force your friends, your family members, and you just practice being on there. Now, remember, right now, I am looking directly into the camera. So I'm here. Wait, where am I going here with my finger? I'm here, but I'm actually looking at the camera. So I'm not looking at anything. I'm just looking at the camera. I can see kind of my body moving around. That's all I can see. But when I'm in the videos, I set the person up just under my camera. So they're sitting just under the camera. So I'm still looking at them, but I'm not actually looking up at the camera. I'm looking at them. But ultimately, the only solution is you just have to practice it, and then you'll get more comfortable with it. And we don't want to we're not locking in. We're going to look, we're going to chat for a second, we're going to look away, we're going to reconnect. I'm one of those people who can awkwardly lock in on people for a very, very long time. So everybody knows this is my first sidebar story of the day. I always love to give at least one or two anecdotes. And so I interviewed a candidate at Google, and he locked in and I locked in. And then I realized at that moment that I had been really doing a disservice to people, because I really can tend to lock in and stay and keep eye contact for very, very long periods of time. And that was probably making people uncomfortable. So we always want to look, we're going to break, we're going to look down, we're going to come back. So you don't have to be all the way locked in. It's really important. Good question. When Google Recruiter says this is the best and final offer after 2 times raising the offer, is this really the highest offer they can go? And how real is the offer deadline? Pitch and tone, right? So pitch and tone. I think I mentioned this right in the beginning, and we're an hour and 4 minutes in, so I don't expect you to be here the whole time. If it's like best and final, all right, cool, best and final, I got you. If they're like, oh, it's like best and final, you're gonna figure it out. But a couple times in negotiating, that's pretty common. That's the most common. We get the number, or we anchor and then we negotiate a couple times. 2 is absolutely the most common. Usually they don't push after 2, but if you feel like there's a little more wiggle room, like 5K here, 7K here, just a tiny bit. If you are going to negotiate a third time, don't go baller. Doesn't work. You have to be very, very reasonable in a third negotiation. Second and third negotiations, we go from a high anchor, then we get really reasonable, and then in a third one, we get very reasonable just to get a little bit more on that last push if you want to. Okay, Dana, we covered that question. Thank you so much for your answer. Okay, I'm glad I'm giving some people hope here. Okay, so what are some common questions that Google asks regardless of position? The most consistent interview that's showing up these days is the Googliness and leadership interview. So I would say I could probably just trigger and put it in the resource and the timestamp to just watch the Google interview playlist. But that's where I would go. The Googliness and leadership is most consistent. So unethical question, conflict question, mentorship question, those kinds of questions are the most common. And then the most common basic question that I see is why Google? That's the most common. The tell me about yourself one, and there is somebody who did a video, Dan Kreuter did a video, and he did Google's most top questions. He got those questions off of Glassdoor. Glassdoor is not real. Glassdoor is real for the questions that look unique, but everybody who just throws tell me about yourself in there, they're just putting it in as a filler. Okay, so I rarely saw that question asked. So you might get a question like tell me about yourself, 1 minute or less. Why Google, 1 minute or less. We did videos on both of those as well. I hope that helps. Doing a great job. Okay, all right, good. I'm hanging in there. If everybody else is hanging in there with me, I think we're doing good. Come back and tell me. For anybody who's looking for comp data, I'm happy to share kind of just my knowledge base. Obviously, levels.fyi is the best tool, but it's always helpful. It's just the comp varies so differently market to market. Come back and tell me the market, please. Question was skipped 3 times. Okay, so I'm just going back, just checking for you. Yeah, we answered. This is the corp eng question. Trying to see. I'm just checking to see if I can see. Yeah, so corp eng. On the side of things for corp eng, I just want you to go back for the T side and see if you can get any more data or information. I did see that corp eng is a little easier. We did get a chance to answer that question. I'm always a little bit behind. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jacob. Hey, how much work experience does Google want you to have for an agency account strategist, GCS? So it can be very limited. We can be talking, Fabian, like 1 to 3 years. So on the agency side, the agency has that agency component a little bit, so maybe more on the like 3 years plus. But these account strategist roles tend to come in L3, L4. So they're quote unquote more junior level roles. They're great in the door roles. You get a lot of client facing, a lot of internal facing work. So they're great, but they don't, the expectation on years of experience it's not very high. Okay, Michael, this is frustrating. Okay. Okay, let's talk about a strategy when this happens. I think this is really, really important. So first things first, this is unacceptable. And when you get that survey, you will absolutely let that recruiter have it. I mean, we're at over a month of no contact, not acceptable. And even in the case that they had to go out on leave or something happened, there should have been some sort of transition plan where somebody was able to get into all their active candidates and reach out. So I want you to go on LinkedIn. And Michael, if you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. And then I would go and try and find your interviewers as much as you can, start reaching out to them on LinkedIn, and you just got to go in any way possible. And then I think maybe at this point, it's been over a month. Maybe you need to title it urgent, urgent. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything. But at this point, I need to escalate the urgency on this message. It's been since December 14th. Or you could put in the title. I've never actually told anybody to do this, but I'm sure your level of frustration is so high now. You could put urgent, no response since 12/14, and then say, thank you so much for all your support. I put that in the title to see if my email could be seen and read. So if anybody goes out on leave, leaves the organization for any reason, all that work should be transitioned. They should get an out of office from the email. So I can't tell you what's going on, but I would just back it up with trying to find the interviewers on LinkedIn and just say, I'm trying to do anything. I haven't heard back in 5 weeks, and I'm at my end, and I don't even know if you know all the names of your full names of your interviewers. Let us know. Come back. Tell us more. If you have any additional data, please let us know. Hey, Jeff, may I ask if Google would prefer to hire a U.S. person for the role in the U.S.? Yeah, they would prefer that. They're not going to tell you that, but it just makes it easier from a timing perspective. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be going after roles that are in the U.S. if you're not in the U.S., but it does make the process easier for them. There's, without question, right? It's faster. They don't have to work through sponsorship, which again is something they support. But if people are not being honest and saying, yeah, it's equal across the board, I don't believe it is. It's easier to hire somebody in their country. Now, of course, in EMEA, it's a little different across Europe, as you can be hired across zones, but usually it's much easier to just hire somebody in their current location, depending on citizenship, right? That can change things as well. You had a set of on-site interviews and the recruiter shared incorrect info. Oh boy. Okay, so you were interviewed for a SWE role instead of a PM role in one of the 3 interviews that day. The one SWE interviewer mentioned he would not share the feedback given the mix-up. Okay. Fast forward a few months, according to the recruiter, you've streamed strong feedback from everyone except the SWE. I know this is not true, as my referral says my application is still waiting feedback from one of the 3 interviewers. Okay. You're at the point where you don't know if the recruiter is lying. She's also unresponsive, very unresponsive, 1 to 2 weeks to respond to emails. I've been asking her for updates, and she continues to say she was finding a team match. Any suggestions? You will have an opportunity to put in a complaint. It just will be after your record is closed, whatever that may be. So you don't have an opportunity now, but when that survey comes through, they're going to have to feel the pain, because what you're trying to do in these surveys is, we're not trying to be rude in these surveys. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that nobody else experienced what we experienced. And recruiters, the reason why I am so shocked at the behavior of recruiters is this is a big deal. Like, when they go in for their approval ratings, like, survey feedback is taken very seriously. If they get negative survey feedback, it hurts their performance greatly. They can't get past even a meeting expectations if they have bad survey feedback. So just gonna have to wait on the survey. In the meantime, just stay on top of it as much as possible. We don't want to call this recruiter out or anything. Just see the process through. Okay, that's the best you can do. And when that survey comes, make sure that they're feeling it. Okay. How much of an adjustment can be expected in the total comp for an offer? 20%. 15 to 25%. I mean, it's the Bay. We can't compare Durham and North Carolina and the Bay. And I know that every single market, I get a lot of feedback from people where they're like, this market's getting really expensive. And Yeah, and Durham is getting expensive because there's people coming in for tech. Tech's blowing up there, but nothing compares to the Bay. Not even New York. There's no comparison between New York and the Bay. The Bay is so devastatingly expensive. You can't go anywhere and get away from the money. It's expensive everywhere. So you're going to have to get that down tick. Still, an L7 position should be paying really, really well. I believe this is a engineering manager L7. I mean, you should still be in that 450-ish range, something like that. It should be pretty good. 400, 450. And that's kind of like your 4-year average. Year one, even in Durham, could be up over 500. It's going to be less, but it will still be great money, especially for Durham, where your money goes a lot further. Hi, Jeff. What happened if I already provide a low salary base before interviewing for an AE role? Will that affect your chance to anchor high? Yep, it will. But here's the thing. You go back and the recruiter comes in, they're like, look, this offer is way more than you expected. You can say, you know what? Unfortunately, I needed to readjust expectations because I've had the opportunity to do my research and speak with current and former Googlers. And I know that my current value of what I thought my value in the market was way below what my actual value is. So I need to reset expectations. They're not going to like that, but trust me, these initial offers are low. They have wiggle room, especially on equity. I have your TPM technical phone interview scheduled for next Thursday. Any tips to cover? Yeah. So typically with Google TPM, these first interviews are going to be a mix of technical domain and program management. It's the most common. Be ready for being good on the program management side and know your domain skills for the role. If it's more general, just try and lean towards your technical expertise as much as possible. Okay. But that's what I see most common is a 50-50 split in these initial phone interviews. Your recruiter was unresponsive for 2 weeks, then told me HC would look over my hiring package again for the third and last time. Is this a good sign? Am I rejected? Should I expect feedback? I'm totally confused by this. Hiring committee would not review your package 3 times. I don't understand what's going on. I don't know. I can't answer this question. HC would not look at your packet 3 different times if you hadn't done additional interviews, there hadn't been other things. Let me know if there's been other things. You're welcome. If the recruiter holds interview feedback information and not move to next stage, is it possible? Well, the recruiter can be the ultimate decision maker. If your feedback's not good, they can just say, hey, they look at the feedback, overall it's not good, then they can be the decision maker. Now, if the feedback is even close enough, they're going to maybe consider you for team match or sharing it with the hiring manager or convincing the hiring manager to go forward. Your recruiter's your advocate. Their goal is to get you hired. It's hard to hire at Google, so they want to get as many hires as possible. So they're motivated to put you through, not the other way around. Yeah, market is location. So it's Sunnyvale, L4 systems, mechanical engineer, definitely in that like 250 plus range is your 4-year average, meaning that, year one, L4 systems mech, and yeah, somewhere in the mid 2s is your 4-year average. Just to follow up on your previous answer, it has been so long that the recruiter review survey has expired. I will take a look at the LinkedIn route. Okay. Never let those feedback surveys expire. The recruiter can't hold that against you. You just have to, if you're worried about giving any really specific feedback in the comment section, you can keep that a little bit more vague. Waited multiple weeks to hear back, but all the others are like check boxes. Make sure we're filling that out, please. You're welcome. Absolutely, Michael. Please keep us updated on your case. Okay. Hi, Jeff. Thank you for sharing. 29-year-old Brazilian control and automation engineer. Okay. Would like to know if it's possible for someone with that background to work at a FANG company not having a green card or MBA. Well, I mean, in Brazil, there's multiple opportunities especially like Sao Paulo is a great opportunity to work in technology. Obviously, it's a huge market and huge city. So MBA not needed, and obviously you don't need a green card. Maybe you start in your country and then you have the opportunity to maybe move on or transfer in the future. Statements of support vary greatly depending on the hiring manager. Some are very short and sweet. Some are very thorough. Just depends on them. It's the recruiter's job to make sure that it's robust. But again, we'll go back to my earlier thoughts. We're trying to find out now, like the rubrics on HC, the thoroughness of the HM statement of support. I mean, they're fine questions. I don't mind the questions, but it's just, you can't control any of that, right? So I just want to continue to state, like, you're in a good spot. Trust that you're in a good spot. I know that patience is difficult, but these things, while good questions, are things that are just totally outside of our control. Okay, we covered that one. L6, L7 non-tech. NYC, program management. You know, I like for an L6 to be right up around that 400 number. Well, so we're going like mid to high threes, like 360, 370, 375 is maybe your 4-year average as a 6, with definitely the first year coming in over 400 for sure. And then we go up over 400 for a 7, without a doubt. You're trying to get into the 4s as much as possible and drive that first year number as high into the 4s as you can. Is it okay to ask for time to prepare for the first phone interview video call, or is it done in the first 7 days? So yeah, it's just once there's interest and they go to schedule it, if you feel like you need more time, you just ask, hey, what's the urgency level? Is the urgency really high? Do you have a lot of competition? Or if I asked for another week, could I have another week to prepare? So just ask. Your recruiter should have a pulse on that. Thank you for answering your last question. What type of salary do they offer? Type of salary do they usually offer for an agency account strategist, GCS, EU based? Okay, so EU's big market. It's going to vary very differently market to market. So what location are you looking to get hired in? May I ask if Google's recruiting system is independent for different countries? Like if we failed an interview, no, it's not independent. You can pull up anybody's information anywhere. It's all connected. My friend who referred me told me he got a notification about a change in the recruiter. You weren't informed, and your old one still followed up with me asking for more time. Should I do something about it? A friend who referred me got a notification. Oh, interesting. Well, ask your referral friend who that recruiter is and put them both together and say, who should be my point of contact moving forward? How long can you postpone a Google interview? Yes. So we just answered this question, but let's just throw it out there. If you accepted the interviewer is not going to be mad if that interview falls off their calendar. That's the gift of time. You are giving an interviewer the gift of time. We just want to check with our recruiter to say, hey, like, what is the urgency on this role? If it's super urgent, then we're going to want to take the interview. If it's not, let's ask for more time. How to best prepare for a first phone screen for TPM? Is it high-level behavioral style? It's a mix, and it's going to be domain-specific and program management specific. Looking through your GCA content, thank you so much, and a lot seems to be GCP oriented. Should you be touching on GCP? Well, it would just depend on, it is a lot GCP just because I get a lot of GCP clients. I mean, it's just kind of specific to me, but when you think about GCA, think about security analysis for products. Like, how do you get into the products? How do you work with product managers? How do you work with Eng? How do you work with program management? How do you work with legal? Really dive in and get into the weeds of your specific role. That's going to be the most important. Sourcer mentioned Monday in the very first call that they are busy with other interviews the whole week. We'll update you by the end of the week. Reach out Friday. Friday's good. In the middle of the interview process, my colleague reached out wanting to provide a referral. Would this help me in the hiring committee decision? If it's a great, fantastic referral and hiring committee is on that, teetering on the edge, and you have a few very, very, very strong internal referrals, yes, it can help. But your internal referrals, if you know this person and they're reaching out and they proactively want to say something great about you, great. That's good news. Just make sure with internal referrals, you know for sure they're going to say something good. Otherwise, it can be devastating. It can be the end of the process. Hi, Jeff. You did an on-site interview last month. Did not receive feedback survey. Is it common? No, you should have received a survey. I don't know how long it typically takes, but once they close out your record, so it's only once they close out your record. So some recruiters are not good at their organizational skills and things stay open for a while. So that could be what it is. They just haven't closed you out. But you should get one, and check your spam or junk mail as well. Absolutely. L6 comp, Bay Area versus Austin, there's going to be at least a 15% downtick to go to Austin. So, controllers, hey, like you're looking at maybe like 350-ish L6 range in the Bay. So, maybe 300 in Austin. Finance roles do not pay as well at Google. That's just the world. Tech roles pay better. And even non-tech, a lot of those people have hybrid tech skills. Finance just tends to pay a little less. Yes, that is correct. What type of salary do you usually offer an account strategist? Yep, EU-based. Again, okay. Dublin. For Dublin, you're looking anything into the low 100s, but again, it's also based on location and level. Total comp, you're looking for that base salary of euros 75 to 85K. And apparently, according to earlier data, now they're targeting a 40% bonus and something in that like 50, 60, 70 RSUs or GSUs. Yep. Both the search and Google Maps are great orgs. It just depends on your interest level. But I would also, what I would also say is like, I want to remove a little bit of like the focus area of search versus Google Maps. When you have conversations with people, like especially as anybody gets in the team match stage, you really want to get your pulse on the manager. Did you like the manager? Because you could get like an ML role that's like more interesting, but you didn't really get a good feel for the manager. Take the other role. The manager will make or break your life at any organization, including Google. Just wanted to ask what you can expect in terms of an apprenticeship interview. I'm a fresher. Okay, so we answered this question earlier. It might not have been somebody else. So more of a behavioral lean. Remember, data analysis is about doing the analytical work, but it's also about strong collaboration skills as well. But expect more behavioral questions than anything else. How to renegotiate an offer? Will GCP ask to see the competing offer? They will ask to see the competing offer. To renegotiate whatever they offered you, just anchor high. If you accepted the offer, you can't renegotiate. Once you've accepted and signed the offer, there is no renegotiation. But if you haven't, whatever they offered you, Really go high, especially on the equity. How strict is the 6-month cooldown if I interviewed for a program manager for Google Fiverr? You haven't confirmed this with your recruiter. Should I wait 6 months? No, talk to your recruiter. Talk to your recruiter, but it's usually at least 6 months, 6, 9 months, a year. You're going to hear all sorts of different data. It's a cool off period. They just want you to cool off for a while. Okay, you're welcome. Good questions today. Again, I just want to remove the control, and you're at a good stage. You'll do great. Okay, we've come to the end of questions. If you haven't hit that like button, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. New course coming out 2/15, and the new website will be launched on Monday. Thank you so much. I will be back next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Have a great day. Take care.